I think the biggest cause for unproductive meetings, due to unproductive meetings, is a waste of time. And it's something I hear all the time, and waste of time ultimately costs money. So you're having people who cost the company money, sitting in a room, spending 2 hours instead of 1 hour, discussing something, leaving a room, and many times not reaching a decision. And so that was a waste of time, many times. I'm not saying that discussions aren't useful, but without a purpose, without an end goal, without an aligned purpose, it can be a waste of time. I think the biggest... I've been to many meetings, like I imagine many people have, and I've noticed that many times they're not productive. It's very hard to have a productive meeting when there are many people in the room, and when you haven't actually determined what the outcome should be. Like, for example, we're having a meeting to decide on this topic by the end of the meeting, or we have to approve something. So many times in a room where you have lots of people talking, it's easy to lose track of what the original point was. And so as someone who attended meetings, I witnessed this, and I did find that many times the meetings weren't productive. Also, for a period of time where I used to work at the bank, I was taking minutes for the executive committee of the bank. And I realized there how important it is to reach a decision, to be able to put it down in the minutes, to make it as clear as possible who's in charge of what and by when and what the deadline is. And after I left the bank and I started doing coaching and training, I heard from lots of participants that meetings are a time waster many times. So I decided to come up with a bunch of ways to make them very, to the point, productive, useful. So I tried to figure out what went wrong after each meeting, or hearing my clients. I sometimes see, what's frustrating. Why do you think it went wrong? And usually it's because there wasn't a clear purpose from the beginning. Maybe an agenda, maybe for each topic. What is the purpose of this topic? Is it just to exchange ideas? Is it to reach an agreement? Is it to approve something? Is it just to inform you of something? And so a discussion would take place. And so I think one of the reasons meetings go wrong is because there's no clear purpose for everybody. Not everybody's aligned and aware of what the purpose of the meeting is. And the second thing is there are other factors that influence how the time is managed during a meeting, and that has to do with people, some personalities. Some people are more dominant and they will talk more. Some people will change the subject. Some people may use this as an opportunity to voice some other things they wanted to talk about because they have someone important opposite them and they never have access to them. And so I think that's another factor. So you're dealing with lots of different personality types. There are people who want to speak up, but they can't speak up because they don't want to be rude and to interrupt. So I think there you need a good facilitator as well to take this into account, and also to be very wary of time. So if the meeting's supposed to last 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and you have 6 topics, you allocate time for each topic. It has to be very controlled. Otherwise, it's more of a social gathering where we exchange ideas. It is in a way, it's nice for some people, but for others who wanted a specific outcome and something to work on and to know what they're going to do afterwards, it may be frustrating. So the biggest cause for unproductive meetings, due to unproductive meetings, is a waste of time. And it's something I hear all the time, and waste of time ultimately costs money. So you're having people who cost the company money, sitting in a room, spending 2 hours instead of 1 hour, discussing something, leaving a room, and many times not reaching a decision. And so that was a waste of time, many times. I'm not saying that discussions aren't useful, but without a purpose, without an end goal, without an aligned purpose, it can be a waste of time. So it's because time costs money, and also it's also a matter of stress, because ultimately when you lose a lot of time in a meeting and you leave and you're not clear on what the next steps are, that's stressful. When you feel like you've lost more time than you had allocated initially, that's stressful. So it has an impact on many things: financial, psychological, resources. So I think that's why it's important to manage meetings quite strictly, I'd say. I think in order to actually manage the time very efficiently during a meeting, it has to do with taking some measures proactively before the meeting, and then taking some measures during the meeting, and some measures after the meeting. So proactively, it's a matter of, for example, setting an agenda and sharing this agenda with the participants beforehand so they know. On the agenda, you can even allocate time for each matter so they know, and you can show which matters are a priority. Usually the topics that have to do with approval, or we have to make a decision today, there's no, we can't postpone it. You have to indicate, maybe put the most important topics first, yeah? And then if you have to send them any information from before for them to prepare, you send them the information. So that's the kind of thing I would put beforehand. And also make sure you invite useful people, because sometimes you have people who may not have, if you need decision makers and they don't have the authority to make a decision, it's postponed, so you haven't finished a meeting with a decision. If you have people who have authority but they're not informed of the topic, they cannot add much value if any questions come up. So it's very important to see who you're going to invite, and you can ask the appropriate person to recommend someone from their department. I would give a copy of the agenda again to everybody so they have it in front of them, like a hard copy. And again, indicate the one who's giving the meeting, who's in charge of the meeting, can say, okay, these topics are the most important. We have to deal with them today. We're going to try and fit all of them in. Please, let's not try and derail from the time frame. We have put, time slots for each topic. The person who's in charge has to be able to monitor certain behaviors, which is very uncomfortable. So it would help beforehand if you gave some rules. For example, try not to interrupt each other, try not to, please put your phones on silent. If you have to pick up a phone, if you have to answer a phone call, please leave the room. Try to, certain rules that they know beforehand. It sounds very strict, but I think it's necessary, because time is important. And then if you see that some people are dominating, there are techniques which we're going to talk about in the seminar about how to help someone, how to get everybody to voice an opinion, just in case they want to and they're just too afraid to interrupt or they feel intimidated. And then it's very important that when you take down the decisions, a person who's taking down the minutes, and they share the minutes afterwards to the participants for their approval, and they show who's in charge of what and by when, that there's monitoring. So, and this is important because if 3 decisions are made during a meeting and then you have another meeting in 2 weeks and there's no follow-up about the decisions, that's another 2 weeks that were wasted. So you put down deadlines for each action. The person who's responsible has to agree. The rest of the members see who's doing what. And then everybody knows who is in charge of an action, that they will be asked to give an update at the next meeting. So there's things to do before, things to do during, and things to do after. And I think for this program, it would be useful to people who organize meetings, whether they're team leaders, managers, project managers, committee secretaries, anybody who organizes meetings, and also people who attend meetings on a regular basis, because there they also have to be able to manage their time themselves and to grab opportunities to speak up at the right moment and to also come prepared. So I think it's useful for anybody who attends meetings, but particularly people who organize them. Ideally, what I do with all the programs I do, I try to make them as practical as possible and to give them tools so that people can apply them the next day. Okay, so I try to make them as realistic as possible. I encourage interaction, so I want to see realistically what the situation is in their premises. And we adjust the tools accordingly, because it's not just textbook theory, it's something very practical. And ideally you want them to be able to apply it to any kind of meeting, whether it's an official of a meeting of an executive committee, whether it's a short catch-up every Monday of the department. There are tools and techniques that you adjust accordingly.